What's up, everybody? Welcome to the SWAT MMA podcast. My name is Jarrod. I'm sitting here with Paul.
What up?
Coming to you from the fight capital of the world. Today, we're going to be smoking and talking all about the UFC 291 pay-per-view card. We're going to be discussing Spence versus Crawford, Inoue versus Fulton. But before we get to the combat sports, you know what time it is. Grab your weed. Fire it up. Let's get into the weed of the week.
Smoke weed every day.
What are we smoking on this week from Lit, Paul?
All right, so this week we have Red Sangria number 17, made by Lit, also known as Lost in Translation.
I haven't had this before.
This one is a sativa hybrid with cross from White Sangria and another strain called 4516.
I've had the other sangria, but none of these. I didn't know they had 17 versions of fucking red sangria.
Yeah, I
It's like
bet you
gelato.
yeah. Well, that's kind of how most weed strains are, though, nowadays. It's all
I suppose.
people trying to fucking recreate shit, you know?
Got a little bit of super sour diesel left. I had a pen around here somewhere, but I can't seem to find it right now.
Yeah, I think I left mine in my car, too.
All right, well, hope whatever you're smoking on is good, folks. Let's go ahead and dive into the combat sports, starting with the last weekend's UFC London card. I thought the main event was a pretty good statement made by Tom Aspinall. The rest of the card was kind of meh for me, so let's just start with that. I mean, it comes out, he's facing Pereira in his return fight, Aspinall's return, since we saw him against Curtis Blades where he blew out his knee. So he's got the TKO loss technically, but he didn't really lose that fight. He lost it to injury. It's been a year. He comes back looking in some pretty goddamn good shape. I mean, he's a big dude, 6'5", 258.
Yeah.
He comes out, and, you know, Pereira's all right. He's been around a long time, ranked number 10. But he's had flashes of some brilliance, flashes of some good fights. He did the world a great favor by knocking out fucking Greg Hardy.
Yeah, that's always great.
So I'm a fan, but he just got smoked. What was it, like 70 seconds, 71 seconds?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also when you talk about what that meant for Tom Aspinall, they've kind of curated these cards around him out in that side of the world, and he always gets this huge pop, and I feel like this was kind of his entrance into the title conversation with this win. There was a little bit of chirping from him and John Jones after the fight as well, which I thought was pretty cool.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, he talked a bit about John Jones. He called out the winner of the Cyril Sergey Spivak fight.
I think that makes a lot of sense for him now.
Yeah, especially since Jones is tied up with Miocic right now.
Yeah.
They could go ahead and do that and turn it into a number one contender's bout.
Yeah, and so my biggest question for you coming out of this fight is we've been around, we've seen the UFC throughout the years, and what they tend to do sometimes when they have prospects, someone like a Tom Aspinall, if in some kind of situation Jones and Stipe fight and they both walk away from the sport, where do you put him on like the short list of guys who are gonna be like the next one up at this weight class?
It's really hard to say because the UFC seems to like Cyril a lot. And I would say he doesn't deserve yet another title shot, but I could see them making him for some fucking vacant title if that happened. I don't know. I mean, I suppose either way, I suppose if that happened and they both retired, that number one contenders bout we just talked about would just become the de facto title fight for the vacant belt. I really don't know what else makes sense at this point.
Well, I just mean with the prospects we have heavyweight, because I feel like in the last few weeks, everyone wants to crown, you know, each guy the one that's going to beat John Jones, whether it be Almeida a couple weeks back when he did what he did to freaking Rosenstruck, and then if you even go further back to it, if you talk about your boy fucking Sergey, what he has been doing
Sergey
to
Pavlovich.
to everyone in the division, and
yeah, he was the guy that Jones was supposedly scared of why he's retiring. But this MMA, it's what have you done for me lately? I mean, Tom Aspinall, though, he was a pretty widely considered prospect before all these guys. It's just that injury kind of took him out of the mix. I mean, if he would have got the win over Curtis Blades instead of the injury, we'd be talking all about him right now. Those other guys wouldn't have had that shine that they had. it's because Tom was out, I feel. So I think that he kind of, with this quick destruction of Tibera, he just reassumes his space at the top above all those dudes because that's where he was before.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been around a hot minute now. I mean, he's
Now-
13-3. He's a big man. I don't think he has anything that Jones hasn't seen before.
That's what I was just going to say. So
than
now let's look at it the other
size.
way. Like, how do you feel if Jones sticks around? How do
And
you
if
feel he
Jones beats
matches up?
Miocic, which is likely, let's be honest, I'm a big Stipe fan. But,
Wow. Someone
I mean,
clip that.
right. But, I mean, let's just go with the most likely scenario. Is Jones getting yet another victory. I mean, Tom Aspinall is good, but this just seems to be a moot point at this stage.
Think so?
It does. I think Jones falls when Jones shows weakness. I mean, Aspinall's great, but he's not anything that hasn't been seen before outside of his size and power. Maybe he's knocking out more guys than John Jones has seen at light heavyweight because he's still raw at heavy. But Jones is not the same guy he was at light heavyweight. He's a massive man himself.
But I'll also say to that point, though, if you look across the board at all the other possible like guys that Jones would face on his way out of the UFC, I think Tom Aspinall is the most well-rounded of all of them. Whether it be Cyril Gane, he has tons of holes. Sergey obviously has holes, as we saw. His only loss in the UFC was to Alex Overeem because of grappling. And then you also look at Almeida, who is a ridiculous grappler, but his prowess on the feet really has yet to be tested.
Right.
But if you look at Aspinall, because of what we said, because he's had a litany of different other fights in the UFC and had these, I'll say one thing, like of most prospects that the UFC's had in the last few years, I think they've done the best job bringing along Tom Aspinall of any of them. Because this dude just continuously fights like the next level, and we've seen him in there against strikers, we've seen him in there against grapplers, we've seen him, and he seems to pass all the tests. So I think the only real X factor he has above all the other contenders is he is the most well-rounded of probably anyone outside of John Jones really at heavyweight right now.
Probably at heavyweight, yeah, it would seem that way.
Stipe included. I think Aspinall could beat Stipe right now. As much as that sounds like, not saying that, Stipe is a shell of himself, but I'm saying like at his age, the trajectory Aspinall's on, like that kind of shit matters. And I think that would matter also if he were to face Jones.
We're going to be getting a different Stipe in this fight. He's supposedly going to be, 20 pounds heavier?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see.
Could
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But
I just mean based on what we've seen in the last couple of years.
I don't think anybody beats John Jones, really.
Yeah, me
So
too. I was
it's
just
hard to
playing
pick that.
devil's advocate for a minute.
But I think Aspinall is definitely the next guy up
Yeah. He's still young, too, which is a good thing.
if he gets past the winner of Gane and Sergey.
I think he does.
Most likely, especially if it's like Cyril Gane. I've never been a believer in that dude.
Yeah.
How about Molly McCann losing in her big show at the O2? I mean, Jesus. She had her moment, and I hate to say it because I like her. She's charismatic and she's fun to watch, but she's done with her moment.
I think that McCann is in a situation kind of where she's a fan favorite, but that doesn't mean that she's the best in the world.
She's 35 years old, too. She had her moment in the sun here. She had that 3-fight streak, got all that shit with Patty.
Yep.
Big crowd, got this fight. This was a gimme for her. This was supposed to be a fight for her to win in front of her home crowd, right the ship, and then she went on and got submitted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's over. I don't mean her career's over, but I mean this run, this fame, this done, dude.
Even the fame part
fun.
doesn't necessarily have to be over, but the sporting aspect of it is
Yeah, I
kind
just
of
mean
over.
headlining shit, co-headlining at the O2 with the screaming fans and the excitement. That moment has passed. I mean, it happens to everybody. She got a good 3-fight streak out of it, dude. That's like, look at Masvidal, fucking ran that shit for a hot minute. Connor, I mean, his is done too. Everybody comes and they go with that fucking streak, but hers is done.
Hold on real quick. I wanted to ask you something. Have you seen it? It kind of ties into this side of the world. Bro, have you seen the pictures of Darren Till lately?
No.
Dude, he looks like he weighs like 250, jacked as fuck.
Really?
Yeah.
Was he doing like Gordon Ryan?
I don't know. But he's talking about he's finally got his training down and he's coming back to combat sports. And I don't know what that means because he also in the past when he not really like pseudo retired from the UFC, he was talking about boxing and doing other shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know what other things he could be into, but he looks like if he does come back, he's going to be fighting like 205.
That would be interesting. Wonder what if he's just bulked up naturally.
But he's always been big though.
He's a big dude. I mean, he
been
was fighting at
remember
what,
he had to cut
170?
weight. He was
And he
cutting
was
so much
dying
weight at
cutting weight.
170, he went blind.
Yeah. So I mean, if he's walking around 190, getting up to 250 is not crazy.
No. But he looks jacked, bro. I was like, what the fuck? I didn't even think it was him.
Oh shit.
I'm gonna have to pull it up for you just because. It's fucking crazy though. I mean, he's kind of one of those guys too. He's another one that like he kind of got fucked by the UFC. Like,
Well, they fast tracked him
soon.
a little too quick. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
too much too soon because they wanted that English star, and they're in danger of doing that with Paddy Pimblett. I mean, he looked like shit in his last fight, and you better fucking either shore up some skills or guys like Pereira are gonna fuck him up. Just talking about Matt Frivola too. He'd have his hands full with Matt Frivola.
Who, Patty?
Yeah, so
Think so?
Darren Till could, suddenly find himself in the spotlight if he did make some kind of comeback and had some kind of success.
God damn it! Everything is loading in this article, but the picture I'm trying to show you.
Of course it is.
Oh god. But yeah, either way, that shit is crazy.
I will say it was nice to have a UFC fight night that wasn't at the Apex.
Oh yeah, that changed everything for me. It just makes everything so much more interesting to watch, man. Because when you have like a crowd behind people, it's
Dude, there could be some big changes up ahead. It is really, really not a given that the UFC and ESPN resign, especially if you look at what's going on with the parent company of Disney. Like, Disney is selling shit off, and they are actively looking for a partner for ESPN. Have you seen this?
yeah.
They're looking for, like, a sports partner to come in with the big bucks, like NBA, and fucking save the network, basically.
Yeah.
You think they're going to shell out a bunch of fucking money for some what is still basically a fringe sport in comparison to the big three or big four? No, I don't fucking see it. I see the UFC moving.
Dude, look at this
without a doubt. Yeah, that fool does look pretty damn big. Shoot.
He looks huge.
Yeah.
Compared to what he used to look like.
Yeah,
Holy
he
shit.
looks massive. Not absurdly so. Not like he's definitely on the juice, but
That's what I meant. Like,
yeah,
that's why
that looks like he
you think
could
it
get
was
that
naturally.
big. I
I'm
mean, he's
like,
a big dude.
I don't know. He just looks big though. Like he looks like he should be fight. That's like looks like a 205-pound fighter right there.
Yeah, it does. Especially he's what, like 6'3", 6'2"?
Yeah, fucking.
He's a big tall
Dude, what if
motherfucker.
Darren Till does an Anthony Rumble Johnson kind of deal where he comes back at like 205, rattles off some like big knockouts, and is like all of a sudden right back into the picture.
I'd be for that shit. That'd be dope.
But yeah, moving on. Sorry, I went on that little thing. I just had
Yeah,
you
that's
needed
cool,
to see
whatever.
that.
That's crazy. But the rest of the card was not really worth talking about on today's show. Let's move forward and dive into the big pay-per-view coming up with the bullshit title, but still a good fight at the head. We've got UFC 291. The big surprise for me going into this is that we haven't seen the co-main event between Blachowicz and Pereira be elevated to a title fight. That seems crazy to me. We're just going to leave the fucking 205 title vacant. Like, it's right here. The only reason I could think of that they might not be doing it is because the fighters would be refusing to do a 5-round fight. But you think they'd turn down a title fight over 10 minutes?
I think either that or Yuri Prochazka is way further along in his recovery than everyone else knows. You know what I mean? That could also be kind of something that's in the fold.
They're waiting for this and the winner gets Yuri?
Yeah, because like let's kind of look at back just how we got to where we are with the whole Yuri thing. You had Jan Blachowicz fight Magomed Ankalaev for the title, and that totally blew up in the UFC's face.
Yeah, it was a draw and a stinker.
Yeah, just like on epic levels. So maybe they just like looked at this fight and they're like, okay, maybe let's not do that again because we had these guys get ready for a 5-round fight 2 weeks before. A 3-round fight, and then 2 weeks before switch it to a 5-round fight, and they came out both looked gassed and put on one of the worst title fights in light heavyweight history. So maybe we make this fight for, you got Pereira, who's also coming off a knockout. You think he wants to go 5 rounds also? I don't think so.
Well, that's the only thing that makes any kind of sense is if Yuri is ready to, or almost ready to go, whereas they can make an announcement at the end of this fight
In the
next week.
octagon, all that shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if they don't do it there, then like within the next week afterwards, you can't leave this title vacant like that. It's without some sort of announcement. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a bad look if they do, because it means they have no plans for the division.
That used to be the premier division in the UFC. I mean,
Yeah.
205 is where the glory has been
Mm-hmm.
historically in the UFC. It would be shocking for them to leave that vacant for a long time.
Yeah, true. That's a good point too, because although over the last few years we have seen a lot of guys like, the McGregors and the Aldos and the, people that are a little bit on the smaller side become some of the stars, but this whole company pretty much gained its popularity from the 205 division, whether it was Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture,
Rampage,
John Jones. All these names were like the core of what the UFC was in the mid to early 2000s, and pretty much up to the McGregor era. Before that, this was the premier division, and to see where it is now is just kind of fucking crazy.
Well, let's make some picks on some of these fights here on the lower portion of this card. Look, we got fan favorite Derek Lewis fighting Marcos Rogero de Lima at a heavyweight bout. Look, I've been a Derek Lewis fan all the time. I'm just going to be brutally honest. I'm over it. Dude's probably going to lose here.
You think
I don't
so?
think he's got the will to win anymore.
I think anybody who's ranked outside of the top 7 is getting slept by Derek.
I don't think he fucking cares one iota. And I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he comes out in shape and wins this fight and looks like he can. But I've seen him too many times now just not give a fuck. For whatever reason. Maybe it's his back. You know what I mean? Maybe he has a legitimate reason, but he's fighting. And I don't mean like I don't give a fuck like I'm winging wild. I mean like I don't give a fuck like I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be doing this.
Well,
I don't
we've
wanna be
seen
here.
Derek struggle with that throughout his career. He had at one point had retired at age 31 and was walked away from the sport.
I sound like a hater. I'm not actually. I fucking love Derek Lewis. I'm just keeping it real. I don't think he wins here. I think he's basically done. I think he's only really hanging around in the UFC because he's Derek Lewis and it's the UFC. Like they try to milk these names as long as they can, but
it's mutually beneficial.
Another
fight. So I'll take Derek Lewis, but another fight on these prelims that I really like is Jake Matthews taking on Miguel Baeza. Baeza's kind of been on a weird trajectory in the UFC. He's one of those like young guys who got brought in from the Contender Series, and he's had some really good like back and forth fights. Whether it was his fight with Matt Brown, which ultimately went away from him, but
yeah.
he's just been able to prove that he's able to freaking get in there and fight with some of the more quality fighters in the UFC. And I think Jake Matthews is another one of those guys, that he's had some mixed results over the years, but he's always proved to be game. And this should be a really good fight as well.
Well, Jake Matthews is a minus 300 favorite.
That's pretty crazy considering both guys' like overall resume. Like I know Matthews is on a little bit of a win streak right now, but the quality of competition isn't really there, I would say, to be a minus 300.
I mean, Derek Lewis is sitting at plus 143 right now, just for the record.
I'll take that. He said just for the record.
I'm just saying, it's not like I'm the only person that sees that.
Well, yeah, no, I see it too. I'm just saying that my fandom side of things, I would hope Derek Lewis gets back on track just because we've seen him do it so many times throughout his career, look down and out and should be, more or less done, and then out of nowhere pulls off like a 3-4 fight, knockout streak, and everyone's like, oh, fuck, dude, how do you not get knocked out by Derek Lewis? You know what I mean? So, we'll see.
Let's move up into the beef of the card here. Michael Kiesa, Kevin Holland.
Now, this is an interesting one.
Yeah, this is a very interesting matchup, and let's kind of look at a deep dive on some of these numbers here. We've got Kiesa's current record's 18-6, 24-9, 1 no contest for Kevin Holland. We look at their last fights. Kiesa's coming off a couple losses. Vicente Luque, who's at Sean Brady, wins over Magny, Dos Santos, and Diego Sanchez in his last 3. Those are debatable in their goodness. I mean, Dos Santos is a solid win. Magny's a solid win. I don't know about beating Diego Sanchez. What are your thoughts on that?
So
I
this
mean,
is like a real interesting matchup, I think, just because of the stylistic side of things. I think when you look at Kiesa, I think his biggest struggle in his career has been being able to, stand in front of guys who have, good striking. And Kevin Holland's one of those guys who's had a trouble getting down and grappling with people who have been some of the better grapplers. So it's kind of both guys are facing their worst nightmare. You know what I
yeah, the
mean? Like,
numbers back up what you just said. Kevin Holland averages a little over 4 strikes per minute.
yeah,
Michael Chiesa averages a little less than 2,
yeah.
1.88. Then if you look over at their grappling, takedown is average per 15 minutes, 3.39 for Chiesa, 0.84 for Kevin Holland. He's not even really trying here. And even in submissions, you've got, a submission 1 average per fight, which is pretty damn good for Michael Chiesa.
But I think that also is what is strange about Kevin Holland's style. Is Kevin Holland is a terrible wrestler, but has great jujitsu. It's one of the weirdest fucking things ever. So I don't necessarily know what that means for this fight. You know what I mean? Because I think that Kiesa is a really really decorated grappler overall, whether it be like the actual wrestling grappling side of things as well as his
I mean, I
jujitsu.
know he's good as jiu-jitsu. What is his wrestling base like? Is he good?
It's pretty solid. I
I
mean,
mean, he's
he's a
always
good MMA wrestler, you know what I mean? And that's
yeah.
really all that matters. He's good at like leverage and shit like that. We've really seen that like in when you look back like at the Diego Sanchez fight, whereas Diego, who was also kind of known as someone who had some pretty good wrestling, fucking Kiesa completely canceled him out and just kind of, you know, smothered him.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just going to be a weird, weird fight, man. Because I think the way Kiesa beats Holland is literally doing the same thing. He's just got to take him down and either put some kind of significant strikes down on him or just chase the submission all fucking day. But I don't really know if this fight ends in a finish if that happens. You know what I mean? I know that if Kiesa tries to stand in front of Kevin Holland, it does end in the finish. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Kevin Holland's actually the favorite in most books. It's around a 150, minus 150 favorite to a plus 125 on Kiesa.
It's pretty much a coin flip.
Pretty much.
Um, yeah. So with all that being said, though, I think I'm gonna go with Kevin Holland in this fight.
Chiesa's just going to come in and try to grapple fuck him. That's his only chance of winning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how fast or how much Kiesa can keep that up without getting tagged, but
Because you've seen that in some of his past fights. You know, the Kevin Lee fight, Anthony Pettis fight. When he tries to like keep a pace on his grappling versus like some of these guys who carry power later into the fight, he tends to tire out and get into these bad situations on the
I
feet.
don't know. My heart wants to say Kevin Holland by TKO, but my gut is telling me for some reason it's going to be Kiesa by submission. So there you go.
By submission.
Yep.
I think if Kiesa wins, it's by a 3-round decision.
Well, there we go.
But
I think the odds makers got it pretty close with a fucking toss-up right there.
And now the interesting, I think, will be the fight of the night, and that is Stephen Thompson versus Michel Pereira.
True, but do you want to talk about, since it comes first on the card, do you want to, and after the Kiesa fight, do you want to talk about Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green real quick? I mean, this is a pretty inconsequential fight here.
Yeah, that's kind of why I skipped it.
But, I mean, they are a couple fan favorite names.
Oh, yeah,
Everybody,
for sure.
You know, we've got Ferguson coming off the loss to Nate Diaz. We've got Bobby Green coming off the loss to everybody, it seems. Seems Bobby Green's always winning until he fucking loses. But
Isn't this... Did Ferguson fight Chandler last or Diaz?
he fought Diaz last.
Oh,
Tony
shit.
Ferguson is a plus 285 dog. Bobby Green is a minus 350 favorite.
Oh, holy shit. Okay. In that case, I'm taking Tony, dog. I don't give a fuck. Tony's career, like, that is the most disrespectful shit I've ever heard. I don't give a fuck what's happened in his last 2 fights, 3 fights, 4 fights.
Man, that could be the bet of the card right there, folks. You could get Tony Ferguson
at plus
at a lot of
225,
sport books
that's
for
crazy.
around 285. That's almost
285?
3 to 1. Plus 285, dog.
Whoa. Don't get me wrong, I love Bobby Green too. He's game as fuck, but Tony Ferguson is a legend of the
That's
sport.
my
That
bet
is
so far right there. I looked at the
disrespectful.
rest of these odds. That's the most out of whack odds so far on the fight card. That's worth throwing 50 or an extra $100 down on Ferguson for.
Bro, that's fucked up.
Especially if you can knock off a KO or a TKO or a sub, you get the prop on that. Because this is just
Because
straight
Bobby's
win.
nice, don't get me wrong. But he's like kind of like, I view Bobby Green as like kind of like a Cowboy Cerrone kind of guy where like he's gonna fight some of these like top guys and he'll beat them every once in a while. But when it gets to the like elite of the elite, I don't know if he's got enough to beat those guys. But
No, he definitely doesn't.
This is a tough. That's crazy to have Tony Ferguson plus 285 for this fight, man.
I want to see Bobby Green's last few fights. Maybe I'm forgetting something here. I got it right here. He's coming off a no contest with Jarrod Gordon, then a loss to Drew Drober, he was KO'd. A loss to Islam Makhachev, he was fucking TKO'd. That's what I'm saying. It seems like he's been losing to everybody by KO lately. Before that, he's got a win over Nasrat, a decision, a TKO over Ally Quinta, then he's got losses to Fizev and Thiago Moises. Yeah, dude, Bobby Green's losing this fight, homie. I'm sorry.
That's crazy.
Tony Ferguson gonna fuck him up.
Tony
I'm
Ferguson,
taking
though,
that bet.
I think Ferguson's on
I'm
like a
betting that
5-fight
shit.
losing streak right now, though.
I don't. That's what I mean.
I don't think
Ferguson's due to right the ship.
Yeah.
He's a good fighter. He's not.
Yeah, you're right.
He's not beating the top of the crop. He ain't fucking going in there and beating Islam. Well, we're talking Bobby fucking Green here, bro. No disrespect to the man, but I'm saying you're not.
There's levels to the game.
There's levels to the game. Ferguson's been up at that level. He's shown that.
And if
He's
Bobby
on a
beats him,
terrible
though,
losing streak. I'm telling you, those things get turned around at fights like this. This is gonna be fucking.
my question to you though, if Bobby beats Tony, where does that put him?
Absolutely nowhere, because Tony, that's the
that's
shit,
my point.
the shit, fucked up shit for Bobby Green. He gets absolutely nothing with the win because people go, yeah, Tony shot. Because that's actually what that will mean. If Bobby Green beats Tony Ferguson, Tony really is done, bro.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Look, Nate Diaz might not have been ranked, but losing to Nate Diaz in the manner he lost really ain't that bad. Like, Nate's a fucking dog. Nate beat Connor, bro. Connor would still have his hands full with Nate right now. Like, that's not. You go out and you lose to Bobby Green, that's something else, man.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's something else. That's the fucking bet of the fucking card right there.
Plus
3-1,
285.
basically. Plus 285 on Tony. I'm hitting the sports book today.
All right, now let's talk about it.
All right, Stephen Thompson, dude. Michael
Pereira.
Or Michael, whatever. No disrespect to him either. I just get high and I butcher names like Joey Diaz. It's embarrassing.
Dude, this is going to be one of the most ridiculous fights I've ever seen, dude. Because you got Michelle Pereira, who's freaking one of those guys who just like does the craziest like capoeira style like attacks that you think he's fucking around, but they're actually effective. And then you have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's just like one of the most elite strikers probably we've ever seen.
And we're talking about karate style striking here, not like boxing style striking. And he's definitely one of the. I mean, he's the best since Lyoto Machida as far as like that karate style in the UFC. And he continues to hold that despite him being a little bit older. I mean, he was born in '83. Pierre was born in fucking '93. I mean, he's got a 10-year difference here, but I don't really think that puts that much of an edge for Thompson because this isn't going to be contested on the ground. Nobody's really going to be wrestling here. I mean, it could happen because sometimes that does, but I would be shocked, bro.
Honestly, though, do you know what we've seen Stephen Thompson when he fights some of these other like high-level strikers put on like a show when it comes to the wrestling side of things. Remember what he did to Masvidal, where he just like out of nowhere, Stephen Thompson like took Masvidal down like 6 times in a fight and just completely shut him out like that. And then even in the Holland fight, I thought that he looked pretty good when it came to like the wrestling exchanges. Holland got cut him down a couple times, but there was never like some glaring discrepancy, you know.
He does have the advantage in grappling. I mean, the takedown, or I mean, the disadvantage though, if you look at takedown averages over the course of the fight or the course of the career, is 0.27 versus 1.56. I mean, it's quite a big difference there. But I don't think that's happening.
Damn, for being 10 years younger, Michelle's got a lot of fucking fights.
Yeah, we're talking 17-6-1 versus 28-11 with 2 no contests. They're pretty similar in average fight time, 13 minutes, to almost 15 minutes for Stephen Thompson. They're both about 6 feet tall. Reach is about the same. Thompson's got a small 2-inch advantage, 73-75. They're both orthodox. Strikes landed per minute, 5 for Pereira, 4 for Thompson.
420 for Thompson. No, come on.
I mean, strikes absorbed is about the same, basically 3 for each. Their defense is about the same. Their grappling has that disparity that we talked about. And the difference is Michel is on a bit of a win streak here, at least 5 fights, you know.
Yeah, if he wins this fight, he's kind of put himself up for a pretty big fight at welterweight after that.
Well, I don't
trying
think
to
he
get the
wins this
Masvidal fight before he pieced out.
I think Stephen Thompson's precision is going to come into play, and Pereira, or am I saying his name right? Is it Pereira? Is it Pereira?
I don't know.
I don't mean any disrespect on sound. It's just too many fucking fighters. I think his wildness is going to just be his downfall. I think that wildness is going to allow Thompson's precision to shine.
Yeah,
and he's going to piece him up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So what's Thompson's? I mean, he doesn't have the MMA record, but his kickboxing record, he's had a lot of fights in his career. I mean, what was he, 96-0 or some shit? Kickboxing?
96-1.
96-1, some crazy shit.
Yeah.
But that's my pick, Stephen Thompson there, absolutely all day.
I'll take Stephen Thompson, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow Pierre pulled it out.
Well, that's a nice way to hedge your bet right there. Now, the odds on this fight have Stephen Thompson at -163 favorite and Michel Pereira at around a +140.
Yeah, it's not that serious. So let's move on. We've got 2 real big fights at the top of the card.
You almost had 2 real big title fights.
I was going to say title fights.
Say, and even that would have been accurate.
Yeah.
If they had made this for the title at 205, that's a big title fight. The other one is, it's bullshit. But we'll get into that. First, we're talking about the 205-pound matchup, which we've already discussed a little bit earlier. It's not for the belt. Mm-hmm. We've discussed the reasons why we think that is, what the possible next step is, but we haven't talked about this fight itself. This is Alex's first fight at 205 in the UFC. He is a big, big man.
Yeah.
It was shocking to me he was at 185 anyways. I don't know how he did it. I mean, during fight camp, he looked like he had no weight to lose, and then somehow he'd be cutting weight. Never had an issue making it, but I'm curious as to what he looks like at this increased size. What do you think?
This is going to be a very interesting fight.
I mean, if you just look at the numbers, I mean, everybody talks about how big Jan was compared to Adesanya. Alex is bigger than Jan. He's 6'4", Jan's 6'2". He's got a 79-inch reach to Jan's 28-inch or 78-inch reach.
28.
28. That'd be funny, a little T-Rex arm, motherfucker.
Oh,
be the Polish dinosaur, not the Polish fucking power with that shit.
I think one of the most underrated stats, I would say, in this entire fight is going to be Jan Blachowicz's grappling, because although his numbers don't really match, the narrative sometimes, if you look back at some of his biggest wins, like when he fought Jacare Souza, who was known as like a real great grappler, he held his own and wasn't giving up the takedown. He fought Corey Anderson, who's seen as an elite grappler, was able to fight off the takedown, keep it on the feet, and put him to sleep. When you look at when he fought Israel Adesanya, not only was he able to take Izzy down, but he also put some pretty sick ground and pound on him as well. So when we've seen, and then even in the last fight against Magomed, he was keeping him generally off the takedowns until both of them were completely exhausted. But I just feel that in this fight, I think the real big X factor is going to be Jan Blachowicz taking Alex Pereira down and how he's going to react to that.
Yes, absolutely, I agree. The odds on this fight are basically a toss-up. If you look across the board, it averages about a slight favor towards Jan, around a -120, -115 to, some of them even have Alex at -110 as well. Some of them have him at +100.
sounds about right.
It's right in there as a toss-up. I'm going with the Polish power. Although honestly, I would like to see Alex get the win. The sporting side of me would like to see Alex get the victory here because of some new blood. I think that would put him in line to fight Yuri for the title. That would be interesting to me. They're both. I mean, Yuri's a really wild striker. No idea how he's going to be coming off that injury. That'd be pretty interesting. Jan's been around a long time. I respect him. He's been champ.
Yeah, I'm taking Alex.
And now, the most important title in all of mixed martial arts. The baddest motherfucker. Dude, this was fun when it was Nate Diaz made it up and they fought George Masvidal for it. And frankly, Paul, they could have made this title fun if Masvidal's next fights would have been for that title. If that's all they had to fucking do was whoever he fought next was for the BMF title. Like, that's because, that's how it works when you have a belt, right? But the UFC just let that shit all fade away. We never hear about it again. And now they fucking trot it out at the last minute after Masvidal retires. And then none of that makes any sense at all. Because the winner of this fight, they have it till they retire. What if they don't fucking retire for 5 years? That's just it? Yeah. What if they get their ass kicked in every single fight after this? They're still the baddest motherfucker? Like, it makes no sense. So I'm not down with this anymore because the UFC already showed us this. It's complete bullshit. I mean, we all knew it was just a fun thing anyways, but then they stopped. Yeah. Fun thing's over now. So we're supposed to care at this point. So take that away. It's a great fight. Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. Dustin and Justin.
Now, this is the second fight. Their first fight was one of the most crazy fights I've ever seen in my life. Like, just two guys. And both guys, honestly, since that fight, have changed their style quite a bit to be sure that they never got into a fight like that.
Yeah, 5+ fights since then for each of them.
It was just a war, dude. It was one of, like, the most crazy, wild fights I've ever seen. And I don't expect this to be any
It's interesting. They both lost to Charles Oliveira 2 fights ago. They both had one, win since then. Gaethje over Fiziev, which was a great fight. That was amazing. And, of course, Poirier over Chandler.
Yep. And then Gaethje also has a win over Chandler. I was going to say, they had very similar fights with Chandler, I thought.
They both have losses to Nurmagomedov.
Yeah. So here's my real question, though. Because the way that this should have been ran versus how it's going is kind of beside me. Because I think they would have got a lot more juice out of the squeeze had they dubbed this the number one contender fight for Islam's title, considering where they are in the division, considering kind of the opponents in which are not, like, like everyone kind of has this consensus that if McGregor fights Chandler and wins, that he's going to fight Islam for the title, which is pretty crazy to me.
Especially since they're going to be fighting at 170 if they ever fight.
Yeah. But that's kind of been, like, in the media world and kind of the whole, every kind of MMA, like,
people have been saying
site, they've been kind of, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, you know what I mean? And even me as a McGregor fan, it's like, I don't think that's a good idea for him.
No, he can't beat Islam. Let's get real. So. He can't beat Khabib. You ain't fucking with Islam.
Yeah.
He's just a better version of Nurmagomedov.
Yeah. So I don't know why they didn't just make this a 5-round fight, put it under this light heavyweight fight, and dub it the number one contender fight for the belt.
Because they needed a title at the top of this card. That was the only reason. And I'm not even making a joke.
Yeah.
That's why. Otherwise, they might have done that.
They don't need that, though.
But in the UFC, I'm saying, I agree, they don't. You're right.
Yeah.
But in the UFC's, whatever reason, their line of thinking, a pay-per-view must have a title at the top of it, to the point where they've made ridiculous interim titles simply for that purpose.
Yeah.
And now this is all that is. This is all that is.
It's kind of weird, though, because they kind of went away from that for a minute, man. Remember they had the McGregor versus Cowboy fight?
Only because it's Conor.
Yeah, but then
Conor's special.
After that, though, that's what they said, though. They were like, oh, yeah. And even the Nate fight, when Nate fought Tony, that was non-title fight on the headline of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, and I'll make an argument because that was basically 1 degree off of Conor. You know what I mean?
Poirier,
UFC
Poirier and Gaethje
eventually builds for fucking Conor Diaz 3. So I could see the UFC going with that. They were trying, and originally that was the Sacrifice Nate Diaz pay-per-view. It was going to be a diss on him.
Yeah.
I mean, they made it a pay-per-view to fucking shit on him on the way out the door. He just turned it into a win. But yeah,
all I'm saying is
it's a bullshit title, but it's a fun fight. Let's talk about the fight itself.
They could have sold this as a non-title fight, and I think it sells the same.
I agree with you. I'm just saying they're in their warped mind. They think they can't do that for reasons that make no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
I don't think they don't need a fucking title at the top of a pay-per-view if it's the right
this
fight.
Is a fucking banger, dude. Two guys that just like go out there and put like whether it's Justin Gaethje or Dustin Poirier, we've seen them put paces on certain fighters that you just never see, man. Like what Justin Gaethje did to Tony Ferguson in that interim title fight was like one of like the most masterclass performances I've ever seen from Justin Gaethje.
Yeah.
Or if you go in and you look at the Chandler fight, where we kind of saw the old version of Justin Gaethje kind of come back out, and he kind of proved that he can fight with, patience and tempo, but he can still be that guy and go out there and win these fights as a fucking just a wild animal. And then the loss to Oliveira, I mean, was tough. It, kind of the loss to Khabib and the loss to Oliveira were like kind of failure to launch fights. There were fights where he went out there and kind of just got ran over.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing he did right or wrong. It just what happened. You know what I mean? And then the fight with Fiziev was another one of those bangers that I think that Gaethje promises every time. And if he does this against Poirier, I don't know how it turns out for him, though.
Well, yeah, because here's the problem. If you look at their statistics, they're eerily similar, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Especially like their average fight time. Look, they've had Dustin's 29-7-1, Justin's 24-4, but their fight time's exactly the same. They both average 10 minutes and 6 seconds, which is just an unusual coincidence. They're both about the same size, 5'9", 5'11". Slight advantage there to Gaethje in height, 2-inch advantage to Poirier with the fucking reach, 72-70. Southpaw versus orthodox. Now that might come into play. Their age, they're literally 2 months apart. Their strikes landed per minute, very similar. Their accuracy is very similar. Their strikes absorbed per minute. Gaethje takes some more hits.
That's where
almost
I was just
double
gonna
the
say.
hits. And then the big difference though comes in the grappling.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 1.39 takedowns for Dustin. We've got a good takedown defense. We've got over a submission attempt, more than one submission attempt per fucking fight. And we've got virtually non-existent statistics on Gaethje in this matter. So depending on how Dustin fights this, I think he's just going to fucking win with his wrestling and ground and pound.
Which is funny that you say that, though, because Justin Gaethje, his roots are in grappling and wrestling, which is like...
I know, we've heard this forever, but I don't believe it anymore.
Yeah.
I thought he'd show it in the Nurmagomedov fight.
Yeah.
And I've heard this. He's an elite wrestler, and I'm not denying that he used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe that he does that anymore. I mean, his fights would say that he doesn't.
He does have a 75% takedown defense, though.
Yeah, he's got a decent takedown defense. But I mean, what, in his last fight, we saw him do a takedown, and everybody shit their fucking pants?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I'm not trying to talk shit. He did his first takedown against Fiziev, am I wrong?
Yeah. I think so, something like that.
It is what it is. I mean, I just never seen it. Like, if you don't use what you have, do you really have it?
Yeah.
In this instance?
No, I agree with you.
If it's a wrestling match, it'd be like, yeah, it doesn't Gaethje probably gonna fucking tear him up. But this ain't. This is an MMA fight where Gaethje never uses his wrestling to offensive like that. He uses the defensive stuff, like you said.
Yeah.
But
he also blocks punches with his face.
Yeah, he does. Hence the 7.66 strikes absorbed per minute.
That's true.
Per minute.
Well, that's kind of the problem, though. He's a gunslinger.
He's eating he's eating close to 40 punches a round.
Yeah.
How many rounds can he keep doing that?
That's true. Well, think about it this way. He lands 7.3 and he absorbs 7.6. So he's just out there leaving him, just letting it ride, dog. Which is crazy that he is even in this point, fighting his whole career like that, because these are his career stats. So
he's always fun to watch. I'll always watch Justin Gaethje fight, and I respect the hell out of him. I don't mean to sound like I'm talking shit on his game. that he chooses to fight that way. It's super entertaining. We all fucking love it. I'm just saying, I don't think that's what it takes. I don't think he can beat Dustin Poirier with that. That's it.
I think a similar game plan to what he fought Tony with. He's got his best chance to beat Dustin. But if he goes out there and fights Dustin like he did the first time and fights wild and doesn't really use tempo or pacing, he's in for a long night.
We've got Poirier being a slight edge in most of the sports books at minus 140. Gaethje averaging around plus 120.
It's about right.
Yep. A lot of tight odds on here, except for that Ferguson fucking fight.
That's just crazy.
That's our pick of the card right there for betting. That's just those odds plus 285 on Ferguson make that a real interesting bet.
For real. So let's move on to the world of boxing for a minute. We got some really big title fights coming up this week, and just one fight that we've just been waiting for forever finally coming to fruition. And then we have Earl Spence taking on Terrence Crawford.
I know this is like literally like 5 years of build-up. It's been like 67 months since they had that big argument backstage, and he was like, "I'll knock you out." Now here we are, man.
Finally,
for all 4 belts, unifying the fucking title at welterweight.
Gotta love it.
This will be the first bout, for all 4 major welterweight belts in boxing history. Spence has the WBC, WBA, and IBF titles, and of course Crawford, who is also on a 10-fight knockout streak, has the WBO belt.
Yep. So there's been let's just kind of go down the line. There's, for people who don't know the story of how we got to where we are, this fight starts with that argument. But then,
way back on November 16, 2018 at the Hooker fight.
Mm-hmm. It starts with that argument, but then there's kind of some reasons why this fight hadn't happened in the last 5 years. You have the Earl Spence getting into a car accident, which has sidelined him for over a year. He had, I think his team as a whole, like, not saying that he's the reason a lot of these negotiations are broke down, but I'm saying at that time, at least, I think that his camp and a lot of people around him were like, I don't know if we should rush into this fight quite yet. Because no one really knew how he was going to react, like, physically.
Yeah, he's only had 2 fights since then.
Well, not only that, and it's one thing for me or you in normal everyday life to get into some kind of situation where we got lucky and, survived, because that car crash that he got into, at least more than half of the time, there's going to be some serious bodily injury that comes with that. And the fact that he flew out of the car and was generally unscathed is ridiculous. So the fact that he wanted to take those 2 fights to kind of see where his body's at, see where his head's at, he did get concussed from it. You know what I mean? Like those kind of things matter, man. So I think that part of the fight not happening this long has been, kind of the only reason I've been okay with it. But all the other negotiation bullshit, man. I think
there's been a lot of problems with Top Rank and everything going on Crawford's side. They just didn't want to make that fight for a really long time.
Oh yeah, Crawford was in pretty much at a point where his own promoter is talking shit about him after every fight, and then he leaves Top Rank, and now I think that was probably the biggest move on why this fight ended up getting done to begin with.
Yeah, it definitely was. There's a whole lot at stake here. Let's just talk about Crawford for a second. If he were, we both know at this point, whoever wins, irregardless, both of them are going to be 2 of the greatest welterweights in history. But if Crawford beats Spence, this would actually be his 2nd time getting an undisputed title, because in 2018 he beat Julius Ndongo to become the undisputed junior welterweight title, although he didn't actually defend that. He gave up all the belts and moved up to 147. So if he wins the welterweight undisputed title against Spence here on the 29th, he's going to be the first men's fighter of the 4-belt era to become an undisputed champ in 2 different divisions. Clarissa Shields did that, of course, in the women's boxing. So there's a lot on the line for Spence here. He's got 10 knockouts in a row. He's actually broken orbitals in 2 title fights of his opponent, and that's a rare injury to have in boxing. And he's done that twice here in both title fights at junior welterweight and at welterweight. The man hits very, very hard. He's been more active than Spence has. Do you think that these things give him an advantage going into here?
See, I think part of the problem is that these two have been kind of known to be the best two guys in the division for the last 5 years in between when they were supposed to fight and now. That I don't feel like either of them have really faced an opponent of each other's level in those 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that although the momentum is big for Crawford, I think the skill. This is going to be either one of the most exciting or one of the most boring fights in the history of boxing, in my opinion. I think it's going to either be both guys respecting each other on such a high level because they know how high level they are,
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to be standing in front of each other all night, and nothing serious is going to. Not that nothing serious, but you know what I mean. There's a difference between two guys who are highly skilled and know what they have in front of them versus two guys who are driven by what's in their head and taking stupid chances, then end up leaving holes that are easily taken over by someone of their same level. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's one thing that Earl Spence, I think Earl Spence is going to win this fight, but I think that Earl Spence shows more holes in his game than Crawford ever does. Crawford is like super, super technical and super, you know, super in tune the whole fight. And I feel like over his career, Earl Spence is willing to take the risk sometimes for the reward, whether it's in the Ugas fight where you had that weird situation where his mouthpiece had fallen out and
Mm-hmm.
he ends up getting rocked by Ugas, and that was like kind of seen as like, whoa, 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 what's going on here? Um, or even in the Danny Garcia fight where I thought that although it was his first fight back from the accident and everything, I thought he looked like you know not a shell of himself by any means, but just like he was getting his feet wet. So the question really is it in his head, does he have that same confidence that he once carried when he was, before the accident and at
Mm-hmm.
the top of the world? And Crawford has just been on this crazy momentum swing that I don't know. It's going to be interesting. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I mean, these two are. It gets repetitive to say, but I mean, their combined record is 67-0. I mean, that means
That's
something.
great.
They got 52 wins by knockout between the two of them.
Hmm.
You know, but only one of them, and that's Crawford, has won all of his fights at 147 pounds by knockout. And I have to give him the edge. The sportsbook have it averaging about minus 175 as a favorite for Crawford and about plus 135 as an underdog for Spence. And my pick in this fight is just going to be going along with them due to those, just the power. I mean, they both have the intangibles. They both have the will to win. They both got the grit. You know what I mean? They both are knockout artists. They both are premier at the top of their game. But I think Crawford's packing a little bit more power, despite the fact he's slightly older. But I think that's going to come into play here. I have to make a prediction of some sort. That's what I got. I think Crawford's going to take it by decision. Tight.
I'm taking Spence by knockout.
That's
Late in the
bold.
fight, though. I think it's round 10.
Yeah, it would have to be late in the fight if that were to happen. But I mean, neither one of these fighters has ever even been knocked down in a fight. Now they both come close. Once
I
back
know,
in
that's why I love it.
2019 for Spence, and um, in the last fight against Ugas or Crawford, whatever. They've never been knocked down. Is my point.
Yeah.
So that's a bold prediction. I don't think that's happening. But you're taking Spence. I'm taking
I
Crawford.
feel like something wild's going to happen that night, whether just because that's what happens in these big fights. We've seen it over the years, man. And if you look in like the history of boxing, like think about when Muhammad Ali got knocked down for the first time, and everyone was like, "What the fuck just happened?" Or when fucking back in the day when Sugar Ray Robinson got beat up by fucking Hearns, like everything. Not Hearns. I'm thinking of God damn it, I'm too hot for this. But I'm just saying, in big fights like this, shit happens that no one has ever seen happen to a lot of these guys because
Mm-hmm.
both are so high level that I would not be surprised if one of them knocks each other out just because this is the top of the mountain. And somebody's got to go.
All right. Well, let's talk about, before we wrap up the show here, the real big fight that's going on this weekend. This unfortunately is flying a little bit under the radar because of the Crawford Spence fight. But we've got Inoue versus Fulton. Inoue is moving up to super bantamweight to take on the WBC and WBO champion Stephen Fulton. That's going down in Tokyo. This is a banger right here. I mean, he's widely regarded, Inoue, as the top pound for pound in men's boxing. I mean, he's been nothing but sensational. And he's been steadily moving up in weight since 108 pounds. I mean, this is a wee little man.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've weighed 108 pounds since, I don't know, 4th grade. I don't know. I mean, shit. I mean, but like, he's packing power. It's just we get so used to the UFC, right, where the smaller fighters, as low as they go in men's, is 125, and the knock on a lot of them is they don't have the knockouts. And in boxing, it just, especially with Inoue, it's not that way. I mean, he had 14 TKOs in his first 16 career fights, and then he started moving up and knocking them fools out too.
So I think the biggest question in this fight, and it's something we've seen throughout history, is when these guys move from weight class to weight class to weight class, is where does the power kind of hit its it bottoms out, you know what I mean? Cause
yeah, it stops somewhere.
It does, as you
Fulton's tough, Philly guy.
Well, that's the thing too, is like
Philly
as you
fighter
get
all the
higher
way.
and higher in weight class, those punches that are not so easily absorbed by the smaller guys are sometimes, just not as just powerful as they are at the smaller weight classes.
Right.
So I don't know. And also it's definitely a different style between these two. Inoue's break you down and put you away kind of guy, where Fulton is more of a like follow a game plan and get to the decision and know what he's got. Like he's gonna go in there and more or less outpoint you, whereas Inoue is trying to put you away the whole entire
Which is odd
fight.
because Inoue's the smaller man, coming into here.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a little bit of a size discrepancy, but it's hard to pick against him. I mean, he's steadily. I mean, he's a minus 410 favorite. I mean,
yeah, Fulton is a champion coming.
And Fulton is the champion, and he's no joke.
Yeah,
like he is a very skilled fighter, and he's looking at around plus 320, and that's crazy.
Which might be another good bet.
I mean, honestly, those odds are a little bit out of line with reality. I mean, come on, plus 320. Like what you're saying, I think Inoue does win that fight, but it's going to be a lot closer than those odds would indicate. Because I think those shots are just going to pile up.
Knockout round 3?
No, I think it'd take a lot longer than that. It might even be a decision.
Think so?
It could be a decision win for Inoue, but if he were to get a TKO, I imagine it's going to be late in the fight after those shots have really started piling up. You know what I mean? Start taking a toll. I don't think he's going to get the early knockouts like he does at the smaller weight classes.
Yeah, I tend to agree as well.
So I'm picking Inoue, though.
Still taking Inoue, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't bet it with those odds, though.
Yeah,
I ain't betting minus 410. That's crazy.
What the fuck are you going to do?
Right.
Make $4? Like, what the fuck? Well, all right, yeah. I think that wraps everything up for the day.
All right, we're looking forward to these fights. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. Puffing down if you did. Thank our sponsor for the show, Binoid CBD. You can get great deals on their products from CBD to Delta-9 THC, and you can also find good deals from the UFC store if you go to our website and click on what, Paul?
Cool Stuff button, and then you also can head to the website and click the gear button, buy a t-shirt, support the podcast, and take your ass over to Instagram and follow us at SWAT MMA Podcast.
SWATMMA.com. Thanks, everybody.
Peace.